G'day and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to explain to you why your pillow is not responsible for your neck pain or neck stiffness. Now I'm fully aware that that might sound like a strange comment coming from a physiotherapist, especially because of the emphasis that we still place on the quality of your pillow and your neck pain and stiffness. But I want to talk about what I've come to understand as a physiotherapist over the last 20 years, trying to solve people's neck pain and stiffness. And while it makes perfect sense that the quality of your pillow may have some role to play in that, hopefully by the end of this video, you'll not only understand that there's actually a bigger picture involved here, and the role that your pillow plays is actually different to what you may intuitively think. And then towards the end of the video, I want to talk to you about this pillow that I was sent by Zamat. It's a Bluedott pillow. As you can see, it's a very unique and interesting pillow that could potentially revolutionize how you feel while you sleep. But before we get to that, let me explain to you why your pillow isn't as responsible for your morning neck pain and stiffness than you might think. So as a physiotherapist, I'm not only passionate about trying to help my patients get rid of their neck pain and stiffness, but I'm also as passionate about trying to understand why the specific parts of their neck have become stiff, tight, and sore in the first place. And by going down that rabbit hole with so many people over the last 20 years, despite how important it may seem that your pillow is, there's actually a step before that that's more important, that completely changes the perspective that we need to have about our pillows and what they're actually doing or not doing for us. So the way that we currently look at things is we currently say to you, your neck and your back needs enough support to make sure that you're in the best position possible while you're asleep. And the way we've always looked at things is that when you wake up stiff and sore in the morning, we logically conclude that the positions or the shapes that you were sleeping in at nighttime were the cause of that dysfunction. But we've created this understanding that if you feel relatively good going to bed and then you wake up relatively stiff or sore first thing in the morning, the only thing that's happened to you is something overnight. And your pillow and your mattress and your sleeping positions are the things that we've come to accept as being the cause of that dysfunction. So naturally it makes sense that if we can optimize your pillow, if we can improve the mattress that you sleep on, if we can try and force yourself into certain postures that are maybe more respectful to your neck, then there'll be an optimal version of that that will help you avoid that morning neck pain and stiffness. But as a physiotherapist is trying to take away as much mystery as possible to ultimately end up with the root cause of dysfunction, as I mentioned before, there's actually a conversation before this conversation that fundamentally changes the way that you might look at the usefulness and the qualities associated with a good pillow. If you wake up with a stiff neck or a sore neck, it naturally makes sense that what you did that night was the cause of that dysfunction. But if I took you to the gym today and we did 1,000 sit-ups, we would naturally be very tired and very weary by the end of that process. Now, if you went to bed that night, your abs don't hurt, but if you wake up the next day and your abs are screaming at you and you can't get out of bed, logically in that environment, we don't necessarily think that we've slept funny. We ultimately know that we did 1,000 sit-ups from the day before because it's obvious and it stands out. We know that you went to bed, you recovered from doing that 1,000 sit-ups, and you wake up with the consequences. Now, the interesting thing about morning pain and morning stiffness for your neck and your back as well is that anything that you feel in the morning isn't a consequence of what happened that night, but more so a consequence of what you did with it the day before. So if you consistently wake up with a stiff or sore neck, we definitely want to respect the type of pillow and the type of position and the type of mattress that you may be sleeping on. But if we can run it through the filter of what you did the day before you actually put your head onto that pillow, we might start to understand the actual cause, the root cause of that dysfunction that we can change, that again may fundamentally change how you view the pillows and the mattresses that you use. So for most people, if we take the 1,000 sit-ups and replace that with sitting at a desk, looking down all day, using your phone, sitting on the couch watching TV, there's often a sustained shape and posture that you may be putting that exact part of your neck into for potentially hours at a time each day, or accumulatively over the course of days, weeks, months, or years, that overload that part of your body so that when you go to sleep and your body recovers, it'll naturally make that area stiffer, tighter, and potentially more sensitive, so that when you wake up with it, you know that there's an issue. But the problem with this example is that the postures and the positions that we might get into the most throughout the day are nowhere near as interesting or as sexy as 1,000 sit-ups. That delayed onset of muscle soreness from exercise stands out in our brain, but the shapes and positions that we get into often do not, because we're not focused on these things. We're distracted by what we're actually doing in the moment. So what I would challenge you to do is, if you are consistently worried about which pillow is important for you or why your neck is stiff or sore when you wake in the morning, I challenge you to take a second, think back to what you've been doing day to day, especially the day before waking up with that stiffness and tightness. Don't necessarily focus on what you are doing. So whether you're at the computer, whether you're using your phone, standing, cooking, whatever it might be, don't worry about the specifics of what you're doing. Try and get a strong sense of what position you might be doing that from to try and understand why a specific part of your body has become sore, maybe on one side more than the other. And if you can start to pick up on those things, and more importantly, start to improve the positions and the shapes that you're in throughout the day, then you should be taking better tissue to bed, and your pillow or mattress shouldn't have anything to support or expose overnight. So when we're looking at traditional pillows, we look at them in a sense that they are trying to improve the position and the shape we put our neck into while we're asleep. But the interesting thing about this conversation is the position that you're getting into at night may not actually be as important as we're making it out to be if we go to bed with better quality tissue in the first place. And for me, what I've come to understand with traditional pillows, a good pillow for you will support the dysfunction that you take to bed better, and a bad pillow for you will expose that dysfunction more. So if, for example, you take some stiff, tight, overloaded tissue to bed, and if you lie on your side but the pillow is too soft, then you're more likely going to jam up that tissue a little bit more than if the pillow is a little bit broader. And it's the same conversation that we can have if you're someone who likes to lie down on your stomach with your head off to the side. The way that I've learned to think about this is that, are you jamming up your neck joints and making them feel sore by being in this position? Or like a lot of toddlers and a lot of young kids who can sleep on their stomach off to their side quite easily, rotating your head is a normal expression of neck range of motion. If you have a comfortable pillow, it should support you in that twisted position. But if you've already overloaded the joints and the tissues in your neck for days, weeks, months, or years leading up to this moment, then you're going to be jamming up tissue that's already dysfunctional in some degree. And whether you eventually feel sore or uncomfortable from this position will rely on the tolerance that your tissue has and the degree of dysfunction that's already there. And what I find with my patients is once we start to clear away some of that stiffness and tightness and dysfunctional tissue, as well as in trying to improve the positions and the shapes they're putting those tissues into throughout the day, then we're finding that they have more movement options and more tolerance to the positions that they might feel comfortable or the shapes that they may want to get into of a night time. So if you can look at your pillow through the lens of trying to either support or expose the dysfunction that you may be taking to bed, then once you start addressing that dysfunction and the positions and the shapes that lead to that dysfunction, you deserve to feel like the pillow that you choose is less important because it's not causing your dysfunction, it's either tolerating it or exposing it. There will still be an optimal pillow for you, but it's important to take that step back so that you can figure out what the optimal environment is as well as what the optimal pillow could be for you. And this brings us to the Bluedott Pillow by Zamat. Full disclosure, the good folk at Zamat reached out to me and sent me this to test out. And my wife and I tested this out last night. And legitimately, it is a genuinely comfortable pillow to use and one that I will now use for myself at the expense of general generic pillows. Now, the reason why this pillow is potentially so helpful is it has a very unique design. As you'll notice, it has the blue dot, which is what gives it its name. And while you may think this is a little uncomfortable to use, having the dot in the middle creates this cupping situation that when you lie down on your back or on your side, provides your head a little bit more of a comfortable position to be in. Now for me, I like to lie on my back, if not just to use my phone, because I'm not a big advocate of sitting up in bed doing it in this way. I'll either try and use my phone in a more neutral spinal position with my arms up, or I'll try and lie on my side with my phone in this position as well. Again, because I'm trying to respect the positions and the shapes that I'm getting into throughout the day. If they're not perfect, I don't want to get into less than perfect shapes again when I'm trying to wind down before going to sleep. And again, using your phone in bed isn't ideal, but there are moments where I feel like I would like to do that. And having a pillow that allows me to be in a nicer position and a supported position just makes that all the more effective and a much nicer position for my tissues to be in, especially based on the shapes and the postures I may have gotten into before my head hits this pillow. The other thing that's really nice about this pillow is it has a contoured section where my head sits. Now again, instead of it being essentially a block or a square shape, this indent does make it easier for me to be in a position where I feel like my spine is still in a neutral shape. I don't feel like my head's being pushed up a little bit, which again is going to be more likely to expose some of that dysfunction that I may have been in, especially if I've been in this position a fair bit throughout the day without realizing it. And the other thing that you'll notice with this pillow is it has these wings at the bottom. And what this is for is that if you are someone who likes to sleep on your side, it is a nice way to cuddle the pillow and support your arms and shoulders instead of letting them drop down, maybe head up underneath that pillow as well. If you are someone who is a stomach sleeper, then again, it gives you a place to put your arm and it gives you a place to support your neck and your head. So again, help you better buffer any of the positions and shapes you may have been getting into and any of that overloaded or dysfunctional tissue that you may be taking to bed. Now, the other thing which is really cool about this pillow is that I'm a huge advocate of making sure that the pillow that you use as a side sleeper fills the gap between your shoulder and your head. And now the thing about these pillows is that they are thick enough that when you're lying on your side, it doesn't push you into some lateral flexion, or it's not so small that it drops you down into that lateral flexion to the other side. But one of the good things about this pillow is it does have a little zip at the back where when you open that up, you'll see that there is an extra layer or a section of memory foam here. Now this is about an inch thick, and what you can do is that if you know that you maybe don't have as broader shoulders as I do and you need a pillow that's a little bit thinner, you can take this out to condense that pillow and make it more appropriate for you. If you need a little bit more bulk in your pillow, then there are inserts that you can purchase to add into this to pad that out a little bit more for you. But the good thing about this Bluedott pillow is that it gives you options. So, and I say this with all sincerity, when I used this last night, I was genuinely impressed. It looks a little different to your traditional pillow, but at the end of the day, you can only go by how it feels and how you feel when you wake up in the morning. So if you are considering getting a new pillow and you want to try out the Bluedott pillow by Zamat, I'll leave a link in the description below. There'll be a code where you can get it cheaper. So the last thing I wanted to touch on is just a couple of things that you can think of to try and put this into practice and prove this to yourself. So the first thing is it's really important to try and get a sense of what your best posture feels like, and then get you to take that to the things that you do the most, compare what that looks like, and go looking for moments where you feel like you are unknowingly getting out of those shapes for long periods of time, and potentially loading up your tissue a certain way, overloading it, creating some dysfunction that you are then exposing when you're going to bed. So how I do this with my patients is if you can stand up and just stand comfortably tall with your shoulders comfortably back. Now, for most people, this feels relatively comfortable. It doesn't feel too weird. It doesn't feel too forced. It's just a shape that you might find that you do get into a lot. But the secret is, as soon as you then sit down, literally nothing should change because it's the same body that you use, whether you're standing or sitting. If you can find where your main stiffnesses and tightnesses are, which we'll get to with the ball in a second, then there has to be an exact reason why one specific joint is stiff on one side and not the other, and why one joint may be stiff and sore in one spot and not higher or lower. And what I've found clinically is that if you layer over the exact positions and shapes that you might get into, let's say that you just sort of like to sit up and read in bed a lot, then the hinge that you're putting through your neck, wherever that hinge goes is where the load goes, and given enough hours, days, weeks, months, or years, it'll start to become subtly stiffer, tighter, a little bit more overloaded, consistently over time, until you get to a threshold where it becomes dysfunctional. Like I said, if you take that to bed, then you're more likely to wake up with it if your body feels the need to tell you about it. But it doesn't tell you what the cause was, it just gives you the symptoms that you're going to be experiencing. Then the other thing that we need to do is try and give you something simple to try that'll help you improve the mobility and the function of that neck to try and get you back to square again. And as I mentioned before, a great way to do this is with a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball. It's one that we do on the channel all the time. And all I want you to do is if you can take that ball and either lean up against a wall or lie down on the floor, we want to take that ball and we want to start at the base of your neck where the bump is. We don't want the ball right on that. We just want it off to the side where there's a bit of a bony muscular shelf there. And all we want to do is we just want to lie down on top of that ball. Now, you will have to roll off to the side a little bit just to put a bit of pressure through there. But what we're looking for here is we're looking for anything that feels stiff, hard, tight, or restricted. Now, it may be tender, but that's not important for this exercise. This exercise is trying to mobilize restricted tissue wherever it is. Once you've found a spot that feels stiff and tight, leave the ball there for a minute or two until you feel like it becomes less stiff and tight. You can then move the ball up or down for anything that you would consider feels stiff, tight, or restricted, and then keep working through that that until it feels less stiff, tight, and restricted. And then what you'll hopefully find is once you spend some time freeing that up, you should feel like the motion in your neck improves, and any pain or dysfunction associated with that may potentially improve as well. Now, I would recommend that you try this before you go to bed, because if we can get your tissue to settle and free up before you have to recover from that, then it's going to give you the best chance to not wake up stiff and sore through your neck the next day. If you do wait until the next day, that's understandable, but because your body will have tried to recover and adapt from the evening or the day before, you will then have to try and get through more stiffness, more muscular tightness, potentially more tender tissue, because your body had a chance to adapt to the stimulus that you gave it unknowingly from the day before. But what's really important about this conversation is whether it's the Zamat Bluedott pillow that you use, or it's a traditional pillow that you've had for years, we need to make sure that you can take that step back and realize that the real conversation here has nothing to do with your pillows. It's the conversation that happens before your head hits the pillow that we need to think of and try and optimize to give yourself the best chance of enjoying the experience of using a pillow. And if you're someone who consistently wakes up with a stiff neck and a sore neck, and you've gone through 1,000 different pillows, take some heart from the idea that if you can improve the postures and the shapes that you get into throughout the day, until you do that, you probably haven't even given your neck a chance to feel as good as it possibly could. But as always, thank you for watching. Again, thank you to Zamat for sending through this Bluedott pillow. I'm genuinely going to be using this from now on. And if you'd like to join me in this, I'll leave a link in the description, as I mentioned, with a discount code attached. And I would love for you to let me know your experiences with your pillows in the comments below. If you did find this video helpful, please consider leaving a like on the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you like the type of content that I'm putting out. But as always, I hope that was helpful, and hope to see you next time.